What if I told you that the jumbo jet you flew on last year might now be serving Big Macs in the desert? Sounds insane, right? But here's the thing. Every single year, hundreds of these massive jumbo jets worth millions of dollars basically vanish from airports around the world, and nobody really talks about where they go. They're not lost though. They're starting these absolutely wild second lives that'll make your head spin. There's this Boeing 747 that used to carry 400 passengers across oceans, and now it's just sitting in the scorching Mojave Desert getting ripped apart piece by piece. After about 25,000 flight hours, the metal fatigue in these planes becomes genuinely terrifying. The aluminum skin that kept you safe starts developing microscopic cracks from all those pressurization cycles, kind of like when you bend a paperclip back and forth until it snaps. Except this paperclip happens to cost $400 million. When maintenance bills hit $50,000 every single day, airline executives basically have a mental breakdown. Just one engine overhaul runs about $12 million, and fuel efficiency tanks by 40% after these birds hit their 20th year anniversary. The math gets simple. Retire the planes or watch your airline go down in flames. Pilots call that final flight out to the desert the funeral flight, which sounds depressing until you realize what actually happens next. Welcome to what might be the most bizarre place on Earth, an aircraft boneyard so massive that astronauts can see it from space. The Mojave Desert facility sprawls across 2,600 acres, housing over 4,000 aircraft. The location wasn't random either. Turns out 120-degree heat preserves metal naturally, plus the alkaline soil works like nature's rust prevention system. The moment one of these jumbo jets touches down at the boneyard, things get really interesting. Day 1 involves draining around 50,000 gallons of fluids. By day 3, they're yanking out engines worth $4 million each. Day 7 sees them extracting all those avionics systems that kept you from becoming a statistic at 35,000 feet. By the 2-week mark, they've stripped that fuselage down to bare metal, and this carcass contains about 6 million individual parts. Now here's where your brain might melt, because one Boeing 747 can generate parts worth up to $30 million. Those curved winglets? Someone will shell out $650,000 for those. A landing gear set goes for $500,000, and even a pilot's seat commands $15,000. There's this whole underground empire of warehouses packed with aircraft parts, feeding airlines desperate to keep their aging fleets airborne. But hold on to your armrests, because we're about to venture into the twilight zone of aircraft afterlife. I'm counting down the most shocking second lives of jumbo jets, starting with the somewhat normal and building up to the completely unhinged. Number 2 involves a kindergarten in Georgia that scored an old Yakovlev 42 and turned it into the world's most epic playground. Picture tiny humans pretending to be pilots in an actual cockpit, sliding down real emergency slides for fun, transforming a Soviet government transport into the ultimate jungle gym. The whole project started when the kindergarten's director spotted the abandoned plane rusting away at a local airfield and somehow convinced authorities that yes, giving preschoolers a decommissioned aircraft was absolutely a sensible educational decision. The Yak-42 had spent decades ferrying Soviet officials around before ending up as scrap metal waiting to happen. Now it hosts daily invasions of 4-year-olds who treat the cabin like their personal kingdom. Teachers stripped out most of the original seats and replaced them with colorful cushions and reading nooks where kids curl up with picture books at 10,000 feet of imagination. The overhead bins that once held briefcases and fur hats now store art supplies and dress-up clothes. Every morning starts with children racing through the boarding door like they're catching the last flight to Adventureland. The cockpit remains mostly intact because apparently someone decided that letting kindergartners play with actual flight instruments builds character or something. Kids take turns sitting in the captain's chair, flipping switches that no longer control anything except their own fantasies of soaring through clouds. The flight engineer station became a science corner where children learn about weather and navigation using the original gauges and dials. What really sells this whole setup is how they integrated standard playground equipment with aircraft features. The emergency slides got reinforced and now function as the world's most authentic airplane-themed slides. Kids queue up at the exit doors, following actual evacuation procedures before washing down to the sandbox below. The landing gear wells transformed into secret hideouts and reading caves. Even the cargo door became an indoor play area for rainy days, complete with foam padding and fairy lights strung where luggage once lived. Parents initially freaked out about safety because letting children play inside a massive metal tube seemed questionable at best. The school addressed concerns by removing sharp edges, installing modern safety railings, and adding enough padding to satisfy even the most helicopter parent. They kept the authentic Soviet interior colors though, that special combination of beige and sadness that screams Cold War chic. The maintenance crew consists of retired aircraft mechanics who volunteer their time keeping the plane structurally sound while teaching kids basic engineering concepts. These old-timers show up weekly to oil hinges and check bolts, often surrounded by curious children asking why planes need wings or how jet engines work. One mechanic installed a working intercom system so kids can make announcements from the cockpit to passengers in the main cabin. The Yakovlev has become such a local landmark that other schools organize field trips just to see it. Birthday parties in the plane booked months in advance. The kindergarten even hosts aviation-themed summer camps where children learn about flight history while literally sitting inside a piece of it. Local pilots sometimes stop by to tell stories about their flying days, turning story time into something magical when told from an actual pilot's seat. But the number one most insane transformation has to be the McDonald's in New Zealand operating inside a decommissioned DC-3. The original seats are still bolted down, except now the seat pockets hold napkins and ketchup packets. It's a fully operational restaurant where thousands of customers eat inside aviation history. And yes, they ask if you want fries with your fuselage. Time to kill the mood, because the aircraft recycling industry harbors a dark secret: the counterfeit parts epidemic. We're talking about 2% of all aircraft parts being fake, fueling a $6 billion black market. A bogus bolt in the wrong spot can literally make a plane fall out of the sky. Back in 2009, investigators uncovered thousands of counterfeit parts in major airline supply chains, looking identical but lacking proper testing. The environmental angle creates its own nightmare. While recyclers salvage about 85% of an aircraft, that remaining 15% turns toxic. Old cabin plastics contain dangerous chemicals. Hydraulic fluids have PFAS compounds that never break down. Carbon fiber becomes an absolute recycling catastrophe since, unlike aluminum, it just becomes expensive garbage. Looking ahead, the future gets simultaneously cooler and weirder. Engineers are unleashing AI-powered robots that tear apart jumbo jets in half the time. 3D printing creates new aircraft parts from recycled aluminum powder. Blockchain systems track every part from removal to reinstallation, making it harder to pass off counterfeits. But the really crazy concepts haven't kicked off yet. People are proposing vertical farms inside 747 fuselages, emergency housing from aircraft sections, and turning retired airliners into mobile launch platforms for space rockets. Here's a fact that will make you feel old. Boeing delivered its last 747 in January 2023, ending 54 years of production. Every 747 you see now is basically a flying fossil. The Airbus A380 faces an even weirder fate, with airlines scrapping these monsters at only 12 years old because they burn money faster than fuel. Converting a passenger 747 into cargo costs about $13 million, literally half the price of buying new. Israel Aerospace Industries has converted over 300 passenger 747s, cutting holes big enough to swallow buses, reinforcing floors for 139-ton pallets, zombifying these jets for hauling everything from iPhones to roses. Special mission aircraft take modifications to bonkers levels. The 747 supertanker could dump 19,200 gallons of fire retardant in one pass. NASA strapped a 17-ton telescope inside a 747 SP to study space from 45,000 feet. General Electric uses a 747 with one empty engine mount to test experimental engines while flying. The human element hits harder than you'd expect. Flight attendants visit planes they worked on like visiting old friends. Pilots remember every quirk of their favorite aircraft. One captain found his nameplate still attached in a Mojave cockpit, a ghost of 10,000 hours commanding that machine. Even Hollywood can't resist, with Spielberg buying a 747 for $60,000 just to destroy it for War of the Worlds. The crew built suburban houses around the wreckage, and thousands of tourists still gawk at the staged devastation daily. The sheer scale will blow your mind, with the aircraft recycling industry exploding from $5.3 billion in 2024 to over $11 billion by 2034. We're looking at 13,000 aircraft retiring in the next 20 years. That's 35 jumbo jets every single day for 2 decades. Storage facilities have become tourist attractions, with aviation nerds paying for boneyard tours among endless rows of sleeping giants. Some places let you climb into retired cockpits, creating surreal museums where exhibits weigh 400,000 pounds. The artistic side produces stunning pieces. Moto art crafts furniture from aircraft parts, turning wing flaps into conference tables. Plane tags cut aircraft skin into luggage tags for $35. And when they released XKLM 747 tags, all 7,500 sold out in 48 hours. International regulations keep complicating everything. The EU's preparing new PFAS restrictions by 2026. Countries compete to attract recycling facilities, recognizing them as gold mines of jobs and materials. Here's something mind-bending. Roughly 10% of stored aircraft return to service when market conditions shift. These planes sleep in the desert for years before suddenly carrying passengers again. The technical expertise required combines metallurgy, hydraulics, electronics, and environmental science. Technicians use ultrasonic scanners to detect invisible fatigue, catalog millions of parts with decades-old serial numbers. Military aircraft add complexity, requiring security clearances to strip weapon systems and classified materials. Even the paint might be secret, turning dismantling into a national security operation. Every aircraft carries a data plate recording its entire history. Recyclers preserve these as artifacts, tiny metal rectangles representing millions of miles condensed into inches of aluminum. The next time you're crammed into economy wondering if peanuts are worth it, remember that plane might become tomorrow's restaurant, hotel, or reef. Every rivet and piece of aluminum has stories and futures we can't imagine. So which transformation shocked you most? Drop a comment with your wildest recycling idea, subscribe for more aviation stories, and check out this video about military graveyards. Until next time, keep watching the skies, because that plane overhead might be flying towards the strangest second act you've ever seen.